Welcome to the debate. Imagine standing right in the middle of a massive, crowded, modern city.
Okay.
Above you is this noisy, incredibly heavy, elevated highway made of pure concrete. Cars are just rushing by, exhaust is everywhere in the air, and it feels like the absolute peak of human industrial development.
Right, a classic urban jungle.
Exactly. Now imagine a city bold enough to just tear that entire highway down, dig into the earth, and bring a buried river back to life right in the center of downtown.
I mean, it sounds like a perfect urban fairy tale. But then you look closely at the actual mechanics of this river and you realize that keeping that story alive requires a massive hidden intervention.
Yeah, there's definitely a catch.
The huge one. The city actually has to pump the equivalent of like 16 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water into that riverbed every single day just to maintain the flowing stream.
And that tension is exactly what we are exploring today. We're looking at Cheonggyecheon, which is a famous stream located right in the heart of Seoul, South Korea.
Right.
For decades, the stream was entirely covered by that elevated expressway we just talked about. But in 2005, the city removed the highway and completely restored the waterway.
Well, restored is a strong word, but yeah.
Fair enough. It raises a really important question for us. You see, this specific stream naturally floods during the heavy summer rains, but it dries up for the rest of the year.
Right, it's naturally seasonal.
Exactly. So to keep it flowing year-round, the city pumps in those 16 Olympic pools, which is about 40,000 tons of purified Han River water and groundwater daily.
Every single day.
Yeah, and from my perspective, despite that heavy human intervention, Cheonggyecheon is a brilliant model of urban regeneration that provides just immense ecological and economic value.
And, I look at it from a very different angle. Relying on that massive daily pump of water makes this an artificial water feature, not a restored ecosystem.
You don't think it counts as an ecosystem?
Not a natural one. I think that heavily complicates its status as a true ecological model for other cities to follow because, well, it relies on brute force engineering rather than natural cycles.
But doesn't the immense payoff for the people of Seoul entirely justify that engineering? I mean, when you look at the sheer scale of tearing down a massive urban highway to restore a river, the physical transformation of the city is undeniable.
Sure, physically, it's radically different.
Right, and the restored stream actively cools the downtown core, it adds this rare, deeply needed green space, and it also completely transformed the old surrounding district of textile and garment workshops into this buzzing, vibrant area.
It definitely brought life back to a space that was entirely dominated by concrete and cars. I won't argue with that.
Exactly.
But look, I don't deny the aesthetic appeal. It looks wonderful, and getting rid of a concrete highway is, generally speaking, a positive step for any city.
A huge step.
Right. But we have to focus on the biological reality of how this stream actually functions. Nature intended for this specific geographic area to be dry for most of the year.
Well, yes, historically.
Right. The heavy rains come in the summer, the water naturally recedes, and the ground dries out. By constantly injecting purified water into it every single day, we aren't restoring a natural river.
So what are we doing then?
We are creating a highly controlled artificial landscape. Honestly, it functions more like an outdoor aquarium.
Okay, I see why you might call it an aquarium on paper, but if you actually walk down to the water level, the reality is very different.
How so?
Well, you're not looking at a sterile glass tank. You see stepping stones connecting the banks. You look into the water and see big carp swimming against the current.
Sure, there are fish.
And you look up and see herons hunting for those fish. To me, the presence of thriving wildlife proves that it functions as a living ecosystem. Regardless of how the water gets there, life has found a home. Wait, let me give you an analogy. Think about a world-class botanical garden.
Okay.
A botanical garden requires a massive amount of human intervention. I mean, a gardener must water the plants daily, prune the trees, manage the soil.
Right, it's highly curated.
Does that daily watering make the garden any less of a living ecosystem? The bees still pollinate, the birds still nest, the plants still grow. Cheonggyecheon is just, an aquatic version of a botanical garden.
That is a clever analogy, but there is a fundamental mechanical difference between a botanical garden and what is happening in Seoul.
Which is?
A botanical garden uses water to grow living tissue. The plants physically consume the water, draw nutrients from the soil, and build cellular structure. The water is a biological necessity for growth.
And water isn't necessary for a fish?
It is, but at Cheonggyecheon, the pumped water isn't mostly being consumed by the environment. It acts as a conveyor belt. It's a kinetic sculpture.
A kinetic sculpture?
Yeah. The water is just flowing past concrete banks to create a visual effect for the people walking by.
But the heron and the carp are still interacting with that conveyor belt. I mean, they are treating it as a habitat.
Yes, wildlife will take advantage of any resource we put in front of them. Pigeons live on skyscrapers, but we don't call skyscrapers a natural cliff face.
Well, no, but...
The issue here is the label of ecological restoration. Restoration implies returning something to a self-sustaining state.
Okay, define self-sustaining in this context.
In a natural river ecosystem, you have a watershed. Rain falls across a massive area of land. The soil absorbs it like a sponge, and it slowly releases that water into the river over months.
Right.
Here, the sponge is a mechanical pump. If you stop watering a botanical garden, the non-native plants die, but the native weeds and the local ecosystem eventually reclaim the space.
True.
But if the city of Seoul turns off those mechanical pumps, the entire ecosystem vanishes almost instantly. The carp die. The herons leave. The riverbed dries up to cracked earth, just as the local climate dictates.
I get that. But why must a modern urban ecosystem be entirely self-sustaining to be considered valid?
Because otherwise it's just infrastructure.
But we live in cities which are entirely human-constructed environments. We pipe in water so humans can drink and bathe. We pipe in electricity so we can see at night.
Right?
So extending that urban infrastructure to support a green, living space for wildlife and people seems like a very natural evolution of city building.
But it's an illusion of nature.
The heron doesn't care that the water comes from a pump connected to the Han River. It just knows there's a fish and it has a place to hunt.
The heron might not care about the pump, but urban planners absolutely must.
Why?
Because when we call this a model of urban regeneration, we are telling other cities around the world, this is how you solve your environmental problems. And that leads us to the physical utility of the stream. You mentioned earlier that the stream cools the city's heat island effect.
I did, yes. And let's dive into that physical benefit, because it is entirely tangible and incredibly important.
Okay, let's talk about the heat island effect.
For listeners who might not be familiar, a heat island effect happens because cities are built out of asphalt and concrete. These materials act like, well, giant thermal batteries.
They just soak up the heat.
Exactly. They absorb the sun's heat all day long and trap it. Then, at night, when the city should naturally cool down, that concrete slowly radiates the trapped heat back into the air, keeping the city artificially hot.
It's miserable in the summer.
It really is, but by removing the concrete highway and introducing flowing water, Cheonggyecheon actively breaks that cycle. Under bridges like Cheonggyecheon, the environment stays remarkably cool even on the hottest summer days.
Right, because of evaporative cooling.
Exactly. The moving water evaporates, and as it turns from a liquid to a gas, it absorbs heat from the surrounding air.
Standard physics.
Right, and meanwhile, the newly planted vegetation provides shade and releases its own moisture. It creates a literal, physical chill in the air that benefits every citizen walking downtown.
A localized chill, sure.
We are talking about temperature drops of several degrees compared to streets just a few blocks away. That is a real, measurable ecological benefit that improves human health and reduces the need for air conditioning in nearby buildings.
Look, I don't dispute the physics of evaporation. Moving water cools the air, and replacing black asphalt with water and plants will always drop the local temperature.
So you agree it's a huge benefit?
I agree it drops the temperature, but we have to look at the hidden costs, specifically the water-energy nexus.
The energy required for the pumps.
Yes, you are fighting a heat island effect by constantly moving an ocean of water. Water is incredibly heavy. A single gallon weighs over 8 pounds.
Okay, but
Pumping millions of gallons of it through miles of underground pipes against gravity requires massive industrial torque. Do you know how much electrical power is required to run those pumps 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
I know it requires energy, but that power is being used to cool the downtown core and improve the public quality of life. I mean, we use electricity to cool buildings. Why not use it to cool a public space?
Because it is a brute force engineering solution pretending to be an ecological one.
Pretending is a bit harsh.
But it's true. You are burning massive amounts of energy on the city's power grid, which often relies on fossil fuels somewhere down the line, just to push heavy water uphill to cool a small strip of downtown.
Right, but
That generates carbon emissions. An elegant ecological solution works with nature, not against it. Nature's design for that specific space was a seasonal stream.
which was completely buried under concrete anyway.
Yes, but by forcing it to be a permanent year-round river now, you are treating an environmental problem with heavy industrial machinery.
I see what you're saying, but
If a city without Seoul's incredible wealth and infrastructure tries to copy this exact model, they will bankrupt themselves trying to pay the electricity bill to keep those pumps running.
okay, that is a fair critique of the energy grid. Though I would frame the return on investment quite differently.
How so?
you are looking at the energy cost in isolation, without looking at the massive economic, social, and structural returns that the energy pays for. Let's talk about the foundational design by Hut and the city planners.
The design phase, right?
Exactly. The core idea for Hut was to ensure this stream wasn't just a pipe spilling water onto the ground. It is a masterclass in urban spatial design.
It is very well designed aesthetically.
It starts at Cheonggyecheon Plaza with this gorgeous fountain and waterfall. From there, citizens and tourists can walk for miles along the water, sunken down and completely separated from the chaotic traffic above.
It's very peaceful down there.
Right? You can walk past traditional spots like Gwangjang Market all the way down to the futuristic Donggaedaenan Design Plaza.
It provides a fantastic pedestrian corridor, yes. But how does the pedestrian corridor justify the ecological debt of the pumps?
Because of causality. How changing the physical space completely rewires the local economy.
Okay, explain that.
When the city planners removed the concrete overpass, they didn't just add sunlight to the street. They fundamentally changed the acoustic environment.
Ah, the noise level.
Yes. Before the restoration, the area was defined by the deafening roar of cars and trucks. It was loud, dark, and just unpleasant. People hurried through it.
Nobody wants to hang out under a highway.
Exactly. But when you take away the cars and bring in a sunken stream, the acoustics change. Suddenly you can hear water flowing. You can hear people talking. When an environment sounds pleasant, foot traffic naturally slows down.
And when people walk slower, they spend more money?
Exactly. The old district along the stream was full of declining textile and garment workshops. Because the stream made people want to linger, street vendors, cafes, and new businesses moved in to capture that pedestrian attention.
It totally gentrified the area.
It grew into a buzzing tourist scene. Every December, a massive lantern and light festival lines the water. At night, the lights reflect off the stream, turning a simple city waterway into something genuinely magical.
It is very pretty.
It brings foot traffic, it brings global business, and it brings joy to millions of people. The electricity required for the pumps is incredibly small compared to the billions of dollars of economic activity and human connection this space generates.
I completely agree that at night, with the lanterns reflecting off the water, it is visually stunning. And the economic numbers speak for themselves.
They really do.
The garment district was revitalized, foot traffic exploded, and local property values went up. It is a wildly successful tourist attraction.
So we agree on the benefits.
Yes, but words matter, especially in urban planning. We must be very careful to separate a great tourist spectacle from an ecological regeneration model.
Why must those two concepts be mutually exclusive? Why can't a space be both an economic engine and an environmental upgrade?
Because conflating the two creates a dangerous illusion. If we tell the world that the absolute pinnacle of ecological regeneration is spending millions of dollars to artificially pump heavy water through a concrete channel, just so tourists can look at beautiful lanterns and buy food at Gwangjang Market, we are losing the plot.
Losing the plot?
Yes. We are confusing commercial landscaping with environmentalism. True ecological regeneration is about restoring natural balances, reducing resource consumption, and creating spaces that can survive without human life support.
But human beings are part of the environment too. I mean, an urban center is our habitat.
Sure.
But if we use our technology and our resources to make our habitat greener, cooler, and friendlier to local wildlife, that is a valid form of environmentalism.
I just think it sets a bad precedent.
Look, we aren't in the deep, untouched wilderness here. We're in the middle of a dense metropolis of millions of people. A hybrid approach, using modern engineering to sustain a green space, might be the only realistic way to bring nature back into these deeply concrete environments.
A hybrid approach is perfectly fine as long as we are honest about the math.
The math?
The energy math. If the primary goal is cooling the city and creating green space, there are ways to do that without fighting the fundamental hydrology of the land.
Like what?
Well, the planners could have designed a world-class seasonal park. Imagine a space that thrives as a lush, green dry valley during the autumn and winter months, and safely channels the floodwaters during the heavy summer rains.
A dry park for most of the year?
Yeah, that would work with the natural water cycle. It would require a fraction of the daily energy because you wouldn't need to pump 16 swimming pools of water every day.
Okay, I see the logic.
And it would still provide a beautiful pedestrian path from Cheonggyecheon Plaza to the design district. By insisting it must look like a flowing river 365 days a year, the city chose aesthetics over actual mechanical sustainability.
I hear your point about the energy and the desire for seasonal authenticity, but I truly believe you are underestimating the psychological impact of water.
The psychology?
Yes, the visual and emotional impact of the flowing stream is exactly what makes the space work. A dry ditch, even a heavily planted one, for 9 months of the year would not have inspired the same economic revival of the garment district.
You don't think plants are enough?
No, I really don't. It would not have become the beloved site of the Lantern Festival. Sometimes the human spirit needs the sight and sound of rushing water to feel connected to a space.
To feel calm?
Right. To feel a sense of calm in the middle of a chaotic city.
I understand the psychological appeal of water. Humans are naturally drawn to it, especially in a concrete jungle. It provides an auditory masking effect that hides the noise of the city.
Exactly, the acoustics.
But we just have to recognize that we are paying a massive, hidden, daily toll on the energy grid to satisfy that psychological desire. It is a luxury, not an ecological baseline.
Well, looking at both sides of this, we're left with a real philosophical question about how we define nature in modern urban spaces.
We really are.
From my perspective, Cheonggyecheon remains a massive net positive for Seoul and a worthy model for the world. By taking down a polluting highway and replacing it with a flowing stream, the city successfully brought vital green space downtown.
It's certainly greener than the highway.
It actively cools the local air by breaking the thermal heat cycle of the concrete, and the acoustic shift successfully revived an old, struggling garment district.
The economic benefits are clear.
Right. And even with the necessary daily pumping of water, it proves that bold, hybrid human intervention can create thriving, living urban spaces that benefit both people and wildlife.
And, my view remains that while Cheonggyecheon is undeniably beautiful and economically powerful, we must view its mechanics with clear eyes.
The pumps.
Yes. The absolute reliance on pumping 40,000 tons of purified water against gravity every single day means it is essentially an artificial landscape.
An outdoor aquarium, as you said.
Exactly. It is a staggering feat of engineering and commercial spatial design, not a triumph of self-sustaining nature. We should be cautious about labeling such resource-intensive, brute force projects as ecological models.
Because of the energy cost.
Right, because true sustainability requires working in tandem with natural cycles, rather than using the energy grid to artificially override them.
It really forces anyone looking at urban design to ask hard questions about what we value more.
Authenticity or utility?
Exactly. Natural authenticity or the very practical immediate benefits an urban population needs to thrive.
It absolutely blurs the line between a machine and a river in a way that few other places on Earth do. You can't look at it without seeing both the beauty and the gears turning underneath.
So when you were in Seoul, take a stroll down the stream, start at the plaza, walk down past the markets, look for the herons, and observe how the city interacts with the water.
It's definitely worth seeing.
And as you walk, ask yourself, when a city tears down a mountain of concrete just to build a beautifully mechanical river, is the real magic in the nature that returns or in the machine that keeps it alive?